Hello friends, welcome. So in this video I want to talk about some of the developments of my speaker. I want to share what I've been doing, my thoughts about amplifier development and what I've been doing the last 3 weeks, because I've been building about 10 versions of new amps, both 2-stage and 3-stage, and all of them single end, because I felt after my last series of differential amps that I needed to, with the new speaker as well, I needed to reevaluate the single-ended topology and just really give it a really good go. And this is all in the background of wanting to go to a more final amp that is more optimized and also in a final chassis and so on, and maybe with an integrated phono stage. So I wanted to move towards the direction, so I wanted to reevaluate the topologies. And so what I did is I tested, I first started out with a 2-stage amp, which is a enduring concept, and because of that the next video will be my reshuffled. It has 2 new entries, top 5 of indirectly heated tubes. So if you maybe remember, if you've been long around on this channel, about 2 years ago or so, I posted a top 8 of indirectly heated tubes, and I revisited this. 2 new tubes came in, the order got reshuffled, mainly because I think my speaker is now more sensitive and has better quality, so different tubes came out better, and so that will be my next video. But after that I started doing a 3-stage amp, and the main idea was that with the 2-stage and high transconductance tubes I got a certain audio quality which seems to have ultra but a little bit unrealistic detail, and more about that in my top 5 video. But what I found is that yes, there's a lot of clarity in a 2-stage amp, and of course it optimizes a lot easier. But what I'm doing is the drive, because I'm using a step-down transformer. The drive, the drive to the output tube is much better, and the problem with DHTs is really that as you approach 0 volt on the grid, so you have a full swing, the impedance of the grid starts dropping. Eventually it will drop to about the plate resistance of the tube, but it starts dropping. And if you have a one-on-one connection, what happens is that the load that the driver tube sees is dropping from almost infinite to down to the plate resistance of the tube. Now at 0 volt it won't need, but if you have peaks and so on, it starts dropping quite dramatically, which distorts the amplification, which should heavily influence the mu, and also you get more distortion. Now when you have a 2-to-1 step down, what then happens is that you multiplying the grid resistance seen by the tube by 4. So the influence of that, and not only that, because you're doing it, if you're using an interstage, also the secondary winding now being 2-to-1 is usually very low impedance, so the current that is picked up by the grid and that needs to go to ground, that resistance drops a lot. So with that concept in mind, I started sort of experimenting, and my first one was with a 6CY7 tube, and then I just a low impedance tube, and then I went to the step down. So now I've got a 7044 driving the Type 50, and I had a 26 in there. Now I've got an 801A in there, and Jody really likes this setup. It's very good. I need to dial it in a little bit more, but so those are some of the things I've been trying. So I've been racing through about 10 amplifier concepts. The one thing I can say is, especially with those 2-stage tubes, I got so many dynamic content and clarity out of that setup, with that single-ended setup, more dynamics than I ever had managed before, and there's some reasons probably for it. I'd say because I'm using an amorphous interstage, which has it acts less as a compressor, I think, than a metal core interstage. I'm using DC links to or out, so DC link capacitors have extremely low inductance and series resistance, so I think that helps. Number 3 is my speaker, and also so just the higher the speed of the 515 compared to the 414, and then the other thing is using high quality inductors on your crossover. So I think all those facets helped with the dynamics, such that the single-ended performance that I get, I feel I'm not compromising the dynamic element enough to warrant a differential amp. So that's a little bit of a shift. I'm still fully exploring it. Yesterday I also had a Type 50 in this position, but which has its own qualities, having sort of almost a Sakuma style only power tubes driving each other. It definitely has a certain quality to it. But I like what the 801A does. It's just the sheer amount of nuance that it picks up, and also its presentation is very nice. Now I need to sort of integrate it into the whole, and just slightly tweak the overall the tonal balance of the amp, but that might also involve just trying a couple of different tubes that are equivalent. There's about 6-7 candidates for this role here for the indirectly heated driver tube. So a little bit more work is going to be done in the future, and then I'll put it in a very nice chassis. So anyway, that's the amp development. So that has been happening there. So let's talk about the speaker. So this is, so as you can see, the look changed a little bit. It's because I filled in all the corners. It still needs to need to do a bit of refinement, and really making it nice and smooth, all the corners and so on. But this looks a lot better. It should sound better because you get less edge diffraction. And then hopefully in the future I'm going to start with making a waveguide / horn for the mid unit. So because I want the presentation, I want the dispersion to be quite even. So I'd like a constant directivity basically over an angle of about 70 degrees probably. That's probably enough, 60-70 degrees, maybe 80, I don't know. Whatever works, but I think 60-70 degrees would be enough with the constant directivity. And I do want to have some horn loading. That there's a possibility that will allow me just at the moment it's a second order filter, so that it's a first order at the start, but then at the bottom, sort of around 100 Hz, I have it drop off with another inductor, so that I'm taking out the bass qualities, while at the crossover point it is just a 6 dB filter. So anyway, I want a horn because I think one of the enduring qualities of a voice of Lancelot type of design is that the apparent source width of the sound is much larger because it's an active cabinet. Because at a very low level, it's not very loud, because this is the most efficient part, and of course the large port as well. I've got a very large port, 2/3 of the SD basically, and the cabinet slightly gives off sound as in a way that is very analogous to a lot of instruments. An instrument never sounds like a point source, like many people set up their audio system, like it acts like a point source. I don't want that. I want it to represent a real scale, and that of course is far more a point source. And what I wanted to do, what happens with the horn, is that you actually create a virtual diaphragm that is much larger, and then the apparent source of that sound lies behind the horn. And so I hope that effect, and I've heard it, so that's what I'm pursuing, is that with the horn I want to sort of project the sound so it doesn't seem to come from a point that is locatable. It has to seem like it matches the larger apparent size of the sound that's coming from the main cabinet. And so one of the things that's working really well for me is that the cone material, being paper here and paper there, is very matching. So I hope to sort of match the characteristics with the horn so that it all becomes a large, sort of quite homogeneous sound between these two. And then to give the sparkle at the top end, of course, I got a third compression driver, and that sort of falls in from the top, just to supplement the high frequencies. And that's probably gonna stay there, or it's gonna be a very small little waveguide. I'm not entirely sure, or I might point it up, because it's really a supplementary thing. It's like it sort of functions like a separate high frequency unit. You see it a lot in Japanese horn systems, where you have like a very wide band horn, like between 300 hertz and maybe 6,000 hertz or 9,000 hertz, that old Western electric style, so covering your whole essential spectrum with one horn, and then they have a little super tweeter sort of supplementing it, or a little small horn to supplement that sound. So that's a little bit the direction that I'm looking for with my future speaker development. And of course, this is very much related to what's happening to the amp. Those two things are very integral, that they need to work together. But I'm very pleased where one of the things that I noticed with the improved drive is just that the presentation, that the sound presentation from low to high at any volume becomes extremely consistent. So, and I've never had that that my speakers could play at very low levels, but with this amount of drive, I find that the speaker is extremely articulate, especially at low levels. And as it scales up, it doesn't change its sound quality. So even though compared to a two-stage, which has its own see-through qualities, I do not find that the presentation is as coherent at different levels. It's sort of, and as a result as well, by the way, this amp sounds way more powerful. Like my previous amp was about 10 watts, and at peaks even more. This one is probably 2.7 watts or something, and at peaks maybe can reach 5 watt when it goes in A2 territory, but it sounds way more powerful. And at the moment I just have to point at this tube, which has, you know, the output impedance to the tube is about 350 ohms, so it's a very powerful driver in a way because of the step down. And also this type of tube, in this case the 7044, is also among the lower distorting tubes. So having two DHTs and a lower distorting tube, not at the start where distortion gets multiplied. It's in the middle stage. I find it a very decent compromise. So yeah. So. You know, there's lots of ways of doing things. Nothing is, you know, a panacea, because you're always making compromises. But I really like having this coherency, and it's not because that's my nature that I like it, but it's just something about this presentation that just makes it effortless, and it makes it coherent and natural, like you don't feel like you're listening to amplifier effects. It recedes the influence of the tube sound and so on. Everything just seems to recede, and one of the things I think to make very well use of, for example, interstages, is that your inductance need to and the capacity to carry current, you need to not be near its limits, because then the coloration of the interstage transformer, its signature sound will start coming out when the plate resistance rises, or you're reaching the limits of its optimal operation point. When you have very low plate resistance and you don't use too much current, I feel that the interstage transformer becomes the most transparent in its operation. So so those are some of the things that go into a design like this. Oh, and one of the more things is that these two are in phase, so I'm trying to avoid harmonic cancellation, especially even order cancellation. I completely try to eliminate it, so I keep the distortion, the natural distortion pattern, which is for triodes, is very analogous to our hearing. So, and rather than cancelling and reducing the THD, my second harmonic is actually higher, but the third harmonic is lower, because when you cancel second, you actually generate a higher order, so you're actually creating third, just like a push-pull amplifier. And the sound effect is exactly the same. And what I find now is that in this amp, the harmonic distortion drops like a rock. So the second is a little bit higher than usual, but it's inaudible. And then third, fourth, and fifth just drops like a bomb. Like the fifth is I think around minus 100 dB. So at least simulated. I haven't just measured it. I'm not sure if I can actually measure 100 decibels under thing, but I will measure this eventually once I have dialed in the design. So that's my amp and speaker update and where it's going, at least part of it. Yes, as said, next video will be my reshuffled new top 5 of indirectly heated tubes. So for anybody interested in creating such an amp, that will have some good advice. It will also have some starting points where I would be looking if I would be doing a 2-stage amp. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for your attention. Thank you to my Buy Me a Coffee supporters. Your help is, I can't describe, it's so good for the channel. Makes me happy. I appreciate it. And yes, thank you for that. So that's it for this video. Take care, all the best, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye now.